the administration at each of the colleges to know exactly what their students are learning. This has been extremely helpful in scaling out our zero textbook cost program. So for this spring, we're offering 82 courses that do not have a textbook cost. And because of that centralized course design model, we have 82 different courses, but that means that it's every single section of those 82 courses. So it's something like 2,700 sections of our courses don't have a textbook cost. So here's a little bit about me. I know Michelle kind of talked about it, but my work is nearly all in open educational resources at this point. I am a solo librarian, so sometimes things fall through the cracks, as you can imagine, but my duties have really shifted from being an online distance librarian to really, you know, becoming the strategist for our open educational resource work. So as Michelle mentioned, I am the current chair of our Colorado OER Council. This is a legislatively mandated council that was put into law through Senate Bill 1813-31, and this council is made up of faculty, librarians, technologists, students, and administrators from throughout the state of Colorado. So we come together once a month. We have a grant program that we facilitate. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. I'm also on the exec council for the Community College Consortium from OER, and in that work I help with special projects, and then I'm also on the regional leaders of open education concerning stewardship. So that means how are we keeping our OER current, and then also how are we being good stewards of that data or of the resources that we create. So that pays in a little bit to patron privacy, student privacy, that type of thing. Doers is a systems level group, so places like SUNY or CUNY or University of Maryland system get together, and we're focusing on trying to tackle the larger issues that a system might face versus just an individual campus. There's a significant amount of overlap there though, so we're working on an equity toolkit that will talk specifically to librarians and faculty about what data they should be gathering in order to see how the OER affects their courses. I'm also a research fellow working on a project comparing courses pre and post OER conversion, and I also serve on ACRL's CJCLS task force. So for today, what we're going to do, first we're going to start by defining the common open terminology. That's so that everyone is on the exact same page. And I know that we probably all have our own ideas about why OER or zero textbook cost is important, but one that I have found extremely relevant to the administration at the 13 colleges, our state legislatures, our governor, is the efficacy of OER and zero textbook cost on student learning and student outcomes. So I'll showcase a little bit of that information as well, so you have it and you are well prepared to share it with the stakeholders at your institution. And then last, we're going to talk about options for open programming that your library can do. Some really low stakes items to some much bigger items where you're going to have to get some buy-in. And then after that, I've left a slide blank, and I would love to have a conversation with you all about what you're doing at your institutions, what's working for you, so that we can kind of crowdsource a list that we can all take with us and leave with some actionable items. Are there any questions before we get started? Okay. Throughout this presentation, I would encourage you to ask any questions you have as we go through. If you're not comfortable with that, or if you want to wait till the end, we can do that as well. So, some baseline definitions. The first is open educational resources, and I use the Hewlett Foundation definition for OER, and this is the same definition that the community college system and our state legislature use. So basically that just says that OER are the teaching, learning, and research materials in any medium, digital or otherwise, that reside in the public domain or have been released under an open license that permits no cost access, use, adaptation, redistribution by others with no or limited restrictions. To me, the most important part of this, well, there's two. The first is the any medium, digital or otherwise. There's a pretty big common misconception that all OER are online materials, and I hear a lot of folks kind of interchange OER with online education or digital integrations into a course. So it is important to note that you can actually print, an OER textbook if you wanted to. And the second are those, the restrictions or lack of restrictions, I guess, for the different types of licenses. No cost access, no cost use, the ability to adapt and redistribute, and also retain a resource. So in this presentation, we're not really going to get into the Creative Commons licenses, but those licenses are the ones that tell you what you can do with the different types of resources. So second is the ZTC, or zero textbook cost. You may have noticed that Michelle mentioned, and then I also mentioned, that CCC Online's courses are zero textbook cost, or ZTC courses. And that's because we use this definition right here. So these are courses that make use of OER and other proprietary learning materials. And those proprietary learning materials may be things like library resources. Perhaps you have films on demand or Alexander Street Video, and you incorporate those streaming videos into your courses. They're still free to students, but we just don't have the right to share them or adapt them under that true definition of OER. I will be completely honest with you, I am not a purist. I believe there are many, many benefits to using the pure OER resources. However, if it doesn't exist or resources are limited in that your faculty is developing a course OER on their own time, I think zero textbook cost is nearly as beneficial to the students. But that's kind of your own personal choice or your institutional choice. The last term that I wanted to define that is slightly controversial would be inclusive access. So these are course content solutions that can lower costs for students, and it still ensures day one access to materials. These materials are incorporated directly into the learning management system. Usually the prices are lower, sometimes significantly lower, due to the volume discounts that are available when all courses in a department or an institution adopt this inclusive access model. You may have seen recently this has come under scrutiny. There is one lawsuit for sure that is currently pending, which states that the inclusive access models is a monopoly against the small independently owned bookstores. So there is a class action lawsuit from those independent bookstores against Pearson, Cengage, McGraw-Hill, and then the Follett, Barnes & Noble companies. So it'll be really interesting to see how that plays out and what that means for inclusive access and students' ability to opt out of participating in inclusive access. Personally, I think that inclusive access is good in that it lowers costs to students, and I think that that's important. However, I have concerns about the privacy aspect of inclusive access and what we are basically forcing our students to agree to in order to take a course. But those are kind of my librarian underlyings coming out when I think about the inclusive aspect of this. I do have to say that the discount in prices is nice. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about what's happening in Colorado. In Colorado, we had our state legislature start funding a grant project for us. So we have 3 years of grants. The first year was $550,000, and then this year and next year are $1 million each. We were really excited because we had a goal for our first year of grants to get a 3 times return on the state's investment of the $550,000. We actually see a return on investment of $3.4 million across the state in cost savings to students. The OER Council that I mentioned before is made up of members from all throughout Colorado. So we represent 12 different public institutions of higher education, as well as 2 state agencies. So it's legislatively mandated that our state library and our Department of Education participate on our council. We had our first state convening where we had 220 folks from around the state attend. Our governor came. U.S. Representative Joe Neguse came, who is currently sponsoring one of the affordability acts in Congress. And we also had 2 state legislatures who attended for the entire day, which was really nice. The grant work that we have done in our first year addressed over 100 course titles and touched nearly 24,000 students. I also would love to welcome any of you to Colorado for our second convening. It'll be held at Colorado School of Mines in Golden, and it should be pretty good. We've got a couple of pre-conferences, things like becoming an OER leader on your campus, accessibility, Creative Commons, that type of thing. There's also going to be a happy hour reception in a mine library, so if you want to come see a moon rock, it's a great excuse. So we're all familiar with the fact that students are expected to budget some number for books and supplies nationally. And that number does range anywhere from $900 to $1,800. You might be familiar with a number from your own institution that looks more like $1,200. I think Colorado Community College System says that students should budget $1,300 annually for their course materials. Are there any OER classes that are gen eds or any upper level? That's a question from Becky. And so in Colorado, we have both. We're focusing really high on our GT pathway courses, which are guaranteed transfer, so a lot of 100 and 200 level courses. But a lot of the institutions like Mines, University of Colorado Boulder, Colorado State University, Fort Collins are focusing on more of those specialized classes. Specifically in engineering is a really popular one. So there's a couple of courses that are upper division that they're taking OER as well. I'd like to talk a little bit about student experiences. We know that students are asked to budget that $900 to $1,800 nationally, according to the College Board. But we also know, according to VitalSource, which is one of the vendors who provide that inclusive access, that students are just not buying their course materials due to high costs. And they're doing that even though they know that it hurts their grades. So 85% of students are delaying or avoiding purchasing their required course materials, and 91% of those students say it's due to cost. And I think that that's one of the main reasons why institutions are supporting OER and why the legislatures in so many states are also supporting OER, because students are opting out of paying for their course materials and they're being pretty upfront about it. Similarly, the Real College survey out of Temple University has been releasing these, in my mind they're heartbreaking, but these heartbreaking surveys of students throughout the nation. So you can actually go in and see Illinois or see Colorado and see what institutions participated. These are the results for Illinois. So in Illinois in 2018, 44% of students were food insecure, which means they either skipped a meal or they had a smaller meal. Maybe they had, plain bread instead of a sandwich, or maybe they had to have someone else buy them their meal. So that's 44% of our students. 54% of our students in Illinois are housing insecure. What that means is that they went without paying their rent. They went without paying their electricity bill so they could pay their rent, or that they're concerned that they may lose access to their housing. And the one that's just the worst to me is the 15% of homelessness. 15% of all students are actually homeless. And that means that they either were staying at someone else's house where they could be asked to leave at any point in time because they don't have a lease. They may be sleeping on someone's couch, or they're living in their car, anything like that. And so I think that the fact that we know that students are food insecure, housing insecure, and or homeless, and that we also know that 85% of students are delaying and avoiding purchasing their required course materials is a really compelling reason to bring to your leadership why you should have institutional support for open educational resources. There are a number of people who say, well, if this is the case, we should just do more to affect tuition costs and bring the overall cost of higher education down. And I think that those are valid arguments. However, I don't know about you, but as a librarian, I don't have the sway with our state board to lower the cost of tuition. But what I can do is help faculty to eliminate one of the barriers to education, which is the cost of their course materials. So as I mentioned, wanted to talk a little bit about attainment and how moving to open educational resources or zero textbook cost materials affects student success and retention. You may be familiar with this study from University of Georgia, where they looked at courses pre-OER and post-OER. What they found were that all students were positively impacted by the move to open educational resources. However, the Pell-eligible students, which are generally our lowest socioeconomic range, as well as often a minority or a non-traditional student, those students were disproportionately positively impacted by open educational resource adoption. You can see that the increase of GPAs went up overall 6.9% in non-Pell eligible students, but increased by 11% in Pell eligible students. Similarly, the reduction in D, W, and F rates, so that would be a drop, a withdrawal, or a fail, also decreased. I guess the wording there is a little silly, but non-Pell eligible students reduced their dropping, withdrawing, and fails by 2.1%, and our Pell eligible students decreased by 4.4%. Now, I think in all likelihood, this is really due to the guaranteed access of materials on the first day of courses. There are some issues with this study, and I think it's important to mention them because the numbers are so great. And to me, those issues really are that the courses pre and post OER conversion happened over a long period of time. So they didn't test, fall of 19 using a traditional publisher material and spring of 20 using OER. There were many years that went by before they actually took a look at the impact. So this means that it probably or may not have been the same instructor. It also has, courses have had quite a bit of time to be refined and revised. So they may be considered a more complete course than a course immediately after conversion, as well as we know that the technology has increased. So there are a lot more interactives, there are access to many more softwares, and maybe even instructional designers. So with all of those caveats, I still think that this study here is incredibly important. And I think it's important to share with the leadership at your institution. Another piece of recent research that I think is really important to share was by John Hilton out of Brigham Young University. And he did a synthesis of OER research that was published between 2015 and 2018. And what he found was that across 16 efficacy and 20 perception studies that involved over 120,000 students or faculty, The results suggest that students achieve the same or better learning outcomes when using OER while saving a significant amount of money. It also indicates that the majority of folks had a positive experience when they used OER, and they would do so again. Now, this is important because it looks at the generalizations across all research studies done on OER versus that one kind of perfect study, if you will, that was done out of University of Georgia's system. I think that both are extremely important to include, and I like to use them together when I'm talking to folks. When it comes to that positive experience and wanting to use them again, that's because, to be honest, taking a course OER or ZTC is a lot of time. It is resource intensive. And so the fact that everyone had a positive experience, or the majority, I should say, shows that that investment of resources is worth it. Now, I'd also like to share some of our numbers and show you the impact of the zero textbook cost materials on our student performance metrics. Part of the reason why I'm in the middle of this study is because I think that CCC Online is a really great case study for looking at the effect of zero textbook cost materials on completer success rates. And this is for a couple of reasons. The first is that centralized course design with our master course model. That means that the only difference between two different English comp courses is the instructor, because the assignments are set, the readings are set, the discussion questions are set, the rubrics are set. So the difference is the instructor, which does make a difference for sure. And also, all of our students do have access to materials on day one, even without OER and zero textbook cost courses. So all of our courses have a digital integration of their course materials into the course, and the students pay for their course materials as part of their tuition and fees. So this is a riff on an inclusive access model. But again, this goes to show that the results of this survey show that there are two effects really that are having an impact on our completer success rates. One is the instructor, and two is the types of materials that we're using. All of these courses that I'll show you went live during our academic year 18, and they were all taught 3 consecutive semesters with traditional publisher materials, and then 3 consecutive semesters with zero textbook cost. They were also all developed using our normal team, which is every course that we develop here at CCC Online is developed using 5 people. The instructional designer and the subject matter expert, who is a faculty member who has 18 hours in the field, as well as that department chair, myself, and then our associate deans. So the courses were under control as much as we could control them, I guess. So first is the look of 1 academic year of traditional materials and 1 academic year of zero textbook cost courses. I'm going to show you the results from these 5 courses. You can see that they're not exactly the easiest courses, at least for me. So we've got Bio 201 and 202, which is Human Anatomy and Physiology. Bio 216, which is Pathophysiology. COM 125, which is Interpersonal Communication. And then Soc 101, which was our Introduction to Sociology. These are the results of comparing the course's traditional materials to zero textbook cost materials. You can see that we had over 6% increase in our pass rates, which was an A, B, and C. For the purposes of this study, failing would be a D or an F. We brought that down by a little bit more than 5.5% as well. Our withdrawals went down to about 0.75%. And in these courses, our enrollments rose more than the actual rate of our enrollment. So that's also something really interesting. Did students know that these courses were zero textbook cost and therefore they enrolled in them? Or did we just happen to have more sets of students in these courses because of the way that enrollment works? So that's something that we're examining right now. Because these courses went live during academic year 18, we actually had the data to pull 2 full academic years of traditional course materials and then 2 full academic years of 0 textbook cost. So this is using those same courses, the pathophys, anatomy and physiology, comm, and sociology. You can see that 2 full years of comparison has a really similar effect on the student outcomes. We also had another pretty large jump in our enrollment in these courses. Now, we don't have course markings in the enrollment system, but they are there in the catalog so that students can see that a course is using 0 textbook cost. So it's really hard to know how many of students actually look at the website catalog versus how many students are using a tool that we call Navigate to figure out their enrollments. But that's another thing that we're looking at. I'm also in the middle of gathering the Q data, which is the gender, age, ethnicity, and socioeconomic status of the students who are enrolled in these courses. So I'm hopeful that there will be either no difference on students or there will be significant influence, positive impact. But in reality, as an OER professional, I hope that I won't be upset if there is no impact on a course when we convert it to OER. So what I mean by that is if the pass rates of a course pre and post OER stay the same, that to me is still a very positive result because students are not paying for a cost, but they're not being harmed either. They're having the same outcomes in their courses. So I hope that either that is the case when we look at our Pell eligible gender or ethnicity in our courses, that either students are not really affected except for during the cost savings, or that they're extremely positively impacted. So we'll see what the results of those are. I should get them late next week. So before we move into programming that you might be able to implement at your libraries, are there any questions about some of the data or facts that I provided in the first part of this presentation? I don't see any in the Q&A, and so I don't see anything in the chat either, but if you do have one, please let me know. So there are 3 major categories that I'm going to talk about for developing the program at OER programs at your institutions. And those are all in support of developing an open infrastructure at your institution. The first is setting up the library as the campus open leader. The second is faculty workshops that you can do. And then the third is liaison programs. So first, establishing the library as the campus open educational resource leader. It's pretty, I think that open educational resources really fit nicely within the library because they support the same access of mission, the same mission of access to information and to resources as libraries do. Also, a lot of us are used to working with faculty by either being embedded in their course, by doing instruction sessions. So we have a positive relationship with faculty or department heads already, and I think it's important to start leveraging that. So first, I would recommend trying to engage with your campus leadership to find a upper level administration who is willing to champion your work. And that may look like bringing some of the data that I provided you earlier into a meeting with the dean who is responsible for the library or a provost. Since every organization is different, you'll have to decide what that campus level leadership looks like. When we were starting our open educational resource initiatives at CCC Online, we started with our executive director because that person was kind of over all of our academic and staffing sides of our institution. And then we brought that up to the Associate Vice Chancellor of the community college system. When we were reaching out to the different colleges to start working on an institutional level, we went to the VPIs, so the Vice Presidents of Instruction, the Vice Presidents of Academic Affairs, and the Vice Presidents of Student Affairs. So those would be the folks that I would try to identify first as the champion, because once they get involved, even if it's just a letter of support for a grant or a nod in a newsletter or something like that, it's a lot easier to get the faculty and department chair level involvement when they know that this is something that their campus leadership supports. I also encourage you to develop an OER committee if you don't currently have one, and I'd like you to be inclusive with your stakeholders that you invite. This means faculties, students, instructional design or educational technology, depending on what your institution looks like, your bookstore, and then student services. The committee that we developed here at CCC Online is made out of the directors of each of our departments, as well as a couple of practitioners. We've had some really great conversations and also some really not great conversations, but everyone's voice is at the table. And I think that that is absolutely critical for continuing to get that upper level leadership support. By us including our business services, which was our bookstore, as well as the person who signs all the contracts for our vendor digital integrations, they were able to bring up things that I, as a librarian who's not teaching for CCC Online, have no idea is going on. So it helped to not only make that area feel like they were included, but also that we were able to address issues before they became issues. The last thing that I would recommend that you do on your campus is to operationally define OER and CTC and low cost. That's pretty critical to have a campus definition of what that means. At CCC Online, we use the Hewlett Foundation's definition of OER, but we actually use the term ZTC on our campus, not OER. And so for us, that just means that students don't have to pay a cost for materials, but we still encourage our instructors and program chairs to use the library materials that we have available to incorporate articles and streaming videos, for example. But also we have to follow this definition because our organization has an extremely strict intellectual property policy. So our state board actually holds the intellectual property of all resources created by faculty and staff throughout the community college system. That means that we can use our materials, but I can't share those materials with someone outside of CCCS without getting the written permission from our state board. So that's why it's so important to look at the policies that your institution might have and see how open falls into those different policies. I see we have a question here. Opening the wrong panels, 1 second. So another question was, do any of our faculty author OER textbook, and does contributing to OER count for faculty? So that is actually a something that is decided on the campus level. The majority of our OER courses are created using either faculty created or faculty adapted resources. I know that one of our institutions, Pikes Peak Community College, actually had their faculty senate change the policies of requiring course materials. They used to do all of their course materials as a department, but now they have changed their faculty policies so that if a faculty member wants to adopt OER, before the department is ready to adopt OER, then that faculty member can do what they would like with their own course. Whereas before, let's say the department chose to use, Pearson, then that department must use Pearson. So this allows some academic freedom there. We also have a number of institutions that are addressing the creation and publishing of OER in the tenure packet as well. That's why the upper campus leadership is so important because yes, the Faculty Senate often decides what the rules are in terms of tenure for faculty, but to see the support for either a course release to adopt something or adapt something or create, or even having a grant program that compensates our faculty to go OER, shows that it's an institutionalized theory now, that everyone believes in OER. The other one that I recommend you defining is low cost. And we did not do that here in Colorado, and I think that that was a little problematic for us. So our state law that talks about the use of OER says that it can be very low cost materials. But that is in direct contradiction with the actual definition of OER, as well as the contradiction of what we mean when we say zero textbook cost. So we are running into some issues now with that, where we have folks who are doing both. So it's important for you, I think, as an institution to say, low cost, according to this institution, is $30 for course materials, and then they be designated with a specific low cost icon, which is different than zero textbook cost. I also would like you to, I also recommend beginning an open program for your library. And I see this looking two different ways depending on the bandwidth of your institution. The first would be to take existing projects and create something like a LibGuide or a website that establishes the library as the place to find open educational resources. And then, depending on your bandwidth, I recommend that you adapt or create your own projects. So I've got a couple of examples here that you could take today and start publicizing. The first is this brand new, recently released OER by discipline guide from McMaster University. So what McMaster did was they basically went through all of the available open educational resource books, textbooks, and aligned them to a specific discipline. You can see here that it has the McMaster logo on it, which is great. But you can also see here that it's licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution license. So you could adopt this press book right now today and send it out to your institutions, or you could change the McMaster University to Illinois Central College, throw your own logos on there, and then send it out, as long as you give the credit to McMaster. So here's an example of what the inside of this book looks like. Here's the Geography and Earth Services. So they have a textbook. It tells you what it includes. So applications, summaries, exercises, and solutions. And they also have a list of courses here that may be affiliated with this specific topic. So you, as I mentioned, could send it out exactly as it is and just say, hey, here's some great material that you could use. Or you could take this and change Earth SC 1G03 to the environmental course, that you have at your institution. Same thing with earth science, and it goes on and on and on. I believe there's 160 resources that are organized by discipline in this book. The next one that I would personally encourage you to do would be to adopt the Colorado's Top 40 Grant Curation Guides. So this is a grant that CCC Online wrote for last year from our state legislature. Colorado has something called the CCNS, which is the Common Course Numbering System. What this means is that this is Business 115, so Intro to Business. This means that every Business 115 course in the state must have the same course description, the same topical outlines, and the same course competencies covered in that specific course. And this is so that if a student takes a course at Front Range Community College and they would like to transfer it to University of Colorado Boulder, that the folks looking at the transcript of the course knows that they were taught what they were supposed to be taught. This comes into handy for us at CCC Online because of this Top 40 project. So what we've done is we've hired 5 librarians. We looked at the top 40 courses by enrollment across the community college system. And we went through all of the available open educational resource content and then aligned it to the different topics or competencies for each course. The reason we chose to do this was because in the 84 courses that we have taken OER, we have learned that instructors don't like to be told what to use in their course, and they don't like to feel like they're being pressured to use something very specific in their course. So the aligning of the content to a topic means that the instructor can go to those different resources, click on them, adapt them how they want to, and that they're sure then that their students are going to be learning what they need to learn. The top 40 courses that we are curating, we are hiring 40 instructors to go through our curation guides and to check the alignment to make sure that the content we've placed under topics and competencies does actually meet that competency or topic. And then once those are available, we'll put them out on a learning or object repository for everyone. This is a draft of one. The actual topical or curation guides, as we call them, are branded with the Colorado Community College system and the Colorado Department of Higher Education. If you would be interested in adopting any of these curation guides for Colorado's top 40 to maybe turn them into Illinois' top 36 or something like that, you are welcome to just take them, remove the logos, put your own logos on, and then just attribute. They should be available by the end of March if you're interested in taking a look at these. So this is my personal favorite reason to use open educational resources, and that's the ability to localize content. So the next few suggestions are workshops that your library can host in order to make folks comfortable using OER, playing with OER, and even really just introducing the ideas of OER. So as I said, the first one here is localizing content. By localizing content, I mean that we can change content or open educational resources to adapt to a particular teaching style or a learning style. We can adapt the content for different grades or for different disciplines or for different learning environments. We can address the diversity needs and cultural preferences or specific pedagogical needs of our courses. And we can also address the school or district standard curriculum. So there's a couple of really popular examples of how to localize content. One of those is astronomy. A lot of the astronomy open textbooks are very US-centric. So a student who is looking at a picture of a specific night sky and a constellation here in the United States, or even in Illinois, will see something very different than someone in Oregon or in France or in Algeria. So that is a way that you can localize content to make it very specific for your needs of your students. One thing that Colorado has been doing, specifically the Department of Higher Education, is they have been, as they adapt materials, locating all of the John Does or Jane Does in a example and changing that to say Juan. So there are different names in the materials. You can change the images to better reflect the diversity of the students that you have in your institution. There's also a really great example of someone providing a translation of a language for certain sections of a book. You can also localize content by changing out things like case studies. So if you're in Peoria, for example, perhaps you change out the case study in a business course to Caterpillar or to Methodist, because those are two of the large employers in the region. And learning about a Caterpillar case study is going to be a little bit more relevant than maybe a Komatsu case study. To be honest, the ability to change the content so that students can actually see themselves in the course content, that to me is the best part of open educational resources, and part of why I support it so heavily. The next workshop that I recommend doing is an adapting and remixing workshop, but specifically focused on the academic freedom of the faculty member. We all know that academic freedom is kind of the magic word, and I hear a lot of feedback from instructors that says that open educational resources are limiting the academic freedom of that particular faculty member. And I disagree with that. I think that open educational resources are about as free as you can get in terms of academic freedom, because they allow you to adapt and remix the content. You can make something more current if you wanted to. For example, if you teach a microbiology course, perhaps you start including resources on the coronavirus. If you're teaching a physical or a political science course, maybe this is the time that we now include a lot more information about an impeachment process and how that affects the United States. So that's why I think that kind of focusing on, the adaption or adoption of OER as academic freedom really goes over well with some faculty. So I would recommend encouraging on focusing on Creative Commons and how that can actually increase the faculty members' academic freedom, particularly if they're not the ones who select their course materials. If they're a department-wide course material selection place, this actually gives the instructor the ability to kind of change out chapters or reorganize. One of the feedback that I hear pretty frequently is that folks are doing this work kind of as other duties as assigned, and I can relate to that really hard. However, if you were to do a hands-on workshop where faculty can come, bring a resource that they think they want to use, get assistance, or just have a dedicated time to have access to the technology needs to adapt something for their course, or sponsoring your own creator fest so that faculty can create the ancillary materials that they need, and then giving them something like an award. This certifies that Brittany Dudek participated in, the Academic Freedom Open Educational Resource Workshop, or participated in the first annual Physical Sciences Creator Fest. Something tangible that they can leave with not only the course materials, but something they can add to their resume, their CV, goes over really well, particularly if we're not compensating people for the time to create the open educational resources or adapt them for their course. I know I'm not a big fan of badging personally. I'm not necessarily motivated by, getting a pink star because I participated in a discussion. But if I have something that I can tangibly add to my CV, that makes me very happy. So I think that would be a great thing to do when you're talking about these workshops. The next workshop idea is to focus on open pedagogy, which is to incorporate students into the creation of open educational resources. Videos or books, let them write the prompts of a material. Here's a weekly discussion idea that I took from David Wiley. And this says that students are selected at random to read the discussion out loud about each reading, and to please be thoroughly prepared so that our time together can be spent productively and you won't embarrass yourself in front of your peers. I think that this weekly discussion leader can be implemented in any course, whereas some of the other open pedagogy ideas where you can have students maybe write an introduction to a letter or to a book, or create study aids, those might be better appropriate for higher level OER courses. So Robin DeRosa is a great example of having students write the introduction to works in the public domain. And now all of our students have author credit for their titles as well. Another workshop would just be a workshop purely based on locating OER, introducing the different types of databases and repositories that we have, and then giving them an opportunity to look through them and review them. So the last idea I have for implementing programs that are a little low stakes in terms of money or resources needed, but high stakes in terms of impact would be the student involvement. I'm sure that all of you have seen the textbook broke whiteboards that are making their rounds. The if you didn't have to spend money on textbooks, what would you buy instead? This is a great way to get students engaged because you're going to see things like pizza and beer, and I think that that's just fine because we all had pizza and beer when we were in college. But you're also going to see things like food, bills, health, insurance, apartments, and similar to the Real College survey results, when I see that my students are having a hard time paying for food and that the one thing that they would have paid for without their textbooks is their medical bills, as an instructor, I cannot justify adopting a $100 textbook when a free version is available and my students are meeting their learning outcomes. So this was from Amanda Tainter at Ridley College about 3 weeks ago. She did a different spin on the textbook broke, and this student says that if they spent $350 on their textbooks and they could have purchased an inhaler. Yesterday, this person actually surveyed the students in their course that using a Mentimeter, which may be a better idea than the Post-it notes and whiteboard because students may be afraid that they'll be found out as the student who's not buying that textbook. So I just think that this is a really good idea. So this instructor polled 25 of her students and said, do you have a textbook for our course by now? And that was in week 4 of the spring semester. Only 4 of those students had a textbook, 21 of them did not. And the reason why they don't have one is because it's expensive, money issues, highly unaffordable. I'd rather study online. I'm hoping it'll be posted. Too bulky. It's font, looks like it says. So these types of reasons are things that we can address using open educational resources. So I would love to know if you have any ideas for programs that you have done at your institution that have been successful or that maybe we haven't covered today, or anything that you'd be interested in doing. I know that some libraries are doing well in the budget department, and they can help to sponsor things like food at a workshop or even stipends to faculty to review resources. So if you have any ideas, I would encourage you to put them in the chat and I can add them to this slide before we send it out through IACRL so that way you can see what everyone else is doing. But this is kind of the quote about open educational resources that kind of resonates with me the most. And I think that this resonates with librarians in general and anyone who works in academics, that at the heart of the open educational movement is the simple and powerful idea that the world's knowledge is a public good. And I think that that aligns really nicely with the services and resources that libraries offer. So I would love to answer any questions that you have or hear any of your ideas for program ideas that your library could implement.
All right, thank you, Brittany. It is 1:59, so we understand if you have to get going, but Brittany has said that she would stick around and have a conversation in the chat box, so please do that. For those that that need to leave, again, thank you to Brittany for this great presentation. We appreciate you sharing your experience with us, and thank you to our participants and the technical support at ILA. To learn more about IACRL's upcoming events, visit our website, which is ila.org/IACRL, or you can follow us on social media or join our listserv. And if you have an idea for an IACRL event or project or a topic suggestion for our next webinar, you can reach out to me. My contact information is on that IACRL website. And thank you, everyone, and have a great day. And let's have some questions and conversation.
Yes. Also, if you're interested in getting like the Colorado's top 40, because I'm nearly positive that Colorado's top enrollment courses are going to be pretty similar to your top enrollment courses, my email address is located on the very last slide. You can shoot me an email and I'm happy to send those over to you. I guess last call for questions or comments or concerns. Definitely don't have all the answers, but I have some of them. No, does not look like it.
Well, I have a question, Brittany.
Sure.
Okay, so so I work at a health sciences college, and it's very difficult to find OERs on nursing specific topics that I'm finding. Do you have any suggestions for programs that are not maybe so easily adapted into OERs that like a textbook? And my faculty always say they have to have those, they really are using the slides that come with the textbook.
Yeah.
And they like, we had an OER book for anatomy and physiology, and because it didn't come with all those instructor resources, they stopped doing that. And now the anatomy and physiology book is like over $200, like $250 for the one textbook. And they do use it for 2 classes, but like still.
Yeah.
So that's the problem I'm coming up with. So I just didn't know if you had any suggestions or thoughts on that.
So first, I would say you need to go look at Wisconsin, because they got a $5 million grant for creating nursing textbooks last year from the Department of Education at the federal level. So there will be hopefully OER coming for your courses soon. That said, I would do one of those types of like a creator fest where it's invitation. Maybe it's anatomy and physiology. Get a faculty champion who likes the OpenStax anatomy and physiology book, and then maybe the library pays for lunch, and you host a ancillary creation day. Or a workshop for an hour or 2 where you can actually write the PowerPoints, and then everyone in the department can use them. And if it's all crowdsourced, then all of the faculty should be kind of feel good about using it, because what they think is important is in those ancillary materials, because that's where a big lift is. And sometimes that might also look like paying people. Giving them a grant to create the localized ancillary material for a specific course. And we have found that grants as small as $100 will help encourage faculty to review the textbooks, but that you really need to look at kind of what you're compensating for your instructors in order to come up with the grant amounts for the ancillary materials. It might look like $1,000 to create, 5 PowerPoints that can be used in a course. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you. Any other questions from anyone? We still have a few attendees hanging on.
I'm going to put my email address up on the screen. So here is my email address. Like I said, please contact me if you'd like any of those Colorado Top 40, but also if you're looking for an excuse to come out to Colorado in June, we would love to have you. Okay, well, I think on that note, I think we're done, and I'll send you the presentation here so you can send it out.
All right, well, thank you so much again, Brittany, and thank you to everyone who participated today. Look forward to more webinars coming from IACRL in the future. Thank you.
All right, thank you.